All right, hi guys, welcome to our midday stream here at Fox 5 Live, Fox 5 DC's digital channel here. During the midday hours, we are showing you right now live pictures of Billy Graham's casket. He is being honored and remembered in Charlotte at the Billy Graham Library right now. You can see right in the left corner of your screen, it's a live camera as people come in and pay their respects to the evangelist who passed away last week at the age of 99. Now, after this, he will be lying in the library there for 2 days. He'll actually be taken up, his body will be taken up here to DC where we are, and he will lie in honor in the U.S. Capitol, in the U.S. Capitol Rotunda. It's one of the nation's greatest distinctions to be there and to lie in honor there, and it will be for a couple of days, so here on Wednesday and Thursday, like I said, at the U.S. Capitol Rotunda, so people from D.C. or from wherever else can come and also pay their respects there. It's the Rotunda itself has been long considered a place to pay final tribute to notable citizens and people who have passed away. And it's it has a long history of honor to lay there. Lying in state is what they call it. But of course, if you're not someone who has served the government, the Congress, etc., they call it lying in honor. So that's what he'll be doing later on this week. But for now, this is a live look in Charlotte at the Billy Graham Library. I also want to take you up to another live event that we're going to be covering here in just a few moments. Here's a live look in New York City. There is going to be a 9/11 at the 9/11 Memorial, an honoring here, a ceremony to remember the 1993 World Trade Center bombing victims. Now, 6 people died in that bombing. More than 100 or so were injured, and they're going to be holding this ceremony in, I believe, what is the 25th year after that bombing. So 25 years later, this is a live look here. We should be getting this ceremony in live, so we'll be playing that for you as well. In quick other news as well, we're going to be featuring, just a few moments ago, one of the survivors from Parkland, the Parkland shooting. Maddy Wilford is her name. She spoke out along with her parents and some of her medical team that helped her through this about her recovery, her road to recovery, her loss, and her hope for the future. And it's really amazing to hear from her. This was in Broward County in Deerfield Beach, Florida. So we're going to play that out for you as well. But first, let's go back to a split screen of the Billy Graham Memorial where he is laying at the Billy Graham Library in Charlotte. And then we're going to make sure we take in this World Trade Center bombing ceremony, which is coming up around noon. So in just a few minutes here, it will start up. And then we'll take it back to the newsroom for some more discussion. Of course, we have a lot of things to talk about with Parkland and what's coming of that, with students continuing to make their voices heard in protest and whatnot. Lots of other little tidbits to share with you as well on our live stream. So stay with us here, guys. We will be back in the newsroom in a little bit. I'll take in this 9/11 Memorial Museum ceremony coming up in just a couple minutes. Be sure to let us know what you think, share your thoughts, any comments or questions that you have in the live stream chat, which is right there on the right corner of your screen in the YouTube channel. And we'll see you soon. If you guys are just joining us here in the newsroom, you can see you're looking at this camera angle here in New York City, right before they start the ceremony to remember the 1993 World Trade Center bombing that occurred on this date in 1993. So 25 years ago, 50,000 people were evacuated from that building after a Ryder truck that held a 1,200-pound bomb exploded in the parking garage beneath the Trade Center. They will be holding a moment of silence, I was told. I was reading at 12:18, which is the time that the bomb went off on that day 25 years ago. So that's what we're expecting here. You can see the ceremony is about to start, and we'll see how this goes and how long. We do have our video up of this, but again, this is live in New York City. Guys, remembering the bombing from 1993.
There's pictures of us in the,
So it's good? So it's back now. Okay, no, it's not right. No, it's on my right. No, time there's no audio coming from channel 1. So right now I'm just hearing do this? No, because on channel 1 there's no levels. No, I double checked on this screen, but so wait, am I only talking to you and then you tell me to talk to them?
Oh, that's what you said. Thank you so much.
Oh, so they're not gonna take on me? Because they told me to like have like talking to the shots. Yeah, I can't. I mean, what's on your card? No, I'm not on that. I'm on like 5 minutes. Yeah, but I should have good. I don't hear anything. I've been trying to, no, I've been trying to patch him for like 30 minutes. Well, I'm on CNC1.
Things that frankly nobody thought possible. GDP 3.2, 3. I think we're going to have another really big one coming up this current quarter. Maybe a number that nobody would have thought would ever be hit. But I think we're going to have a very good number because of the stimulus, because of the massive tax cuts that we're all benefiting. Whether you're Republican or Democrat, you're benefiting tremendously from those tax cuts. Apple's investing $350 billion in the United States, and you look at what's going on. It's really quite something. You just read a week ago, Exxon is now coming in with $50 billion, and many companies. Also, something that nobody expected, they're also coming in with massive bonuses for their workers. Nobody thought in terms of that. We know that everybody's going to get a lot more income, and we've seen that as of February 1st. Everyone's saying, wow, I have an extra $250 in my paycheck, and that's pretty good stuff. So we knew that was going to happen. We didn't know that hundreds and hundreds of companies, millions and millions of people were going to be getting large bonuses because of what we did. And one of the things we're working on is fair and reciprocal trade deals. We're not being treated fairly. You as governors are not being treated fairly. And when I get too tough with a country, you're always calling, oh, gee, don't do that. But I must say, it's more senators and congressmen and women that call. You haven't been calling so much. You want to see great deals. But we have to make the deals fair. You know, with Mexico as an example, we probably lose $130 billion a year. Now, for years I've been saying, for the last year and a half, I've been saying 71 billion, but it's really not. And they have a VAT tax of 16%, and we don't have a tax. And at some point, we have to get stronger and smarter, because we cannot continue to lose that kind of money with one country. We lose a lot with Canada. People don't know it. Canada is very smooth. They have you believe that it's wonderful, and it is for them. Not wonderful for us, it's wonderful for them. So we have to start showing that we know what we're doing. World Trade Organization, a catastrophe. China became strong. You look at it. It was going like this for years and years, and hundreds of years. It's going just like this. I have great respect for President Xi, by the way. So I'm not blaming them. I'm not blaming Mexico. I'm not blaming anybody. I'm blaming us because we did such a poor job for so many years. I'm not just talking about President Obama. I'm talking about many presidents. For 30 years, 35 years. But World Trade Organization makes it almost impossible for us to do good business. We lose the cases. We don't have the judges. We have a minority of judges. It's almost as bad as the Ninth Circuit. Nothing's as bad as the Ninth Circuit. It's almost as bad. Speaking of that, DACA is going to be put back into the Ninth Circuit. You know, we tried to get it moved quickly because we'd like to help DACA. I think everybody in this room wants to help. with DACA. But the Supreme Court just ruled that it has to go through the normal channel, so it's going back in, and there won't be any surprise. I mean, it's really sad when every single case filed against us is in the Ninth Circuit. We lose, and then we do fine in the Supreme Court. But what does that tell you about our court system? It's a very, very sad thing. So DACA is going back, and we'll see what happens from there. So we want fair trade deals. We want reciprocal trade deals. Scott Walker has a wonderful company called Harley-Davidson in Wisconsin, right? Great. So when they send a motorcycle to India, as an example, they have to pay 100% tax, 100%. Now, the Prime Minister, who I think is a fantastic man, called me the other day. He said, we are lowering it to 50%. I said, okay, but so far we're getting nothing. So we get nothing, he gets 50, and they think we're doing, like they're doing us a favor. That's not a favor. And you know what I'm talking about. It's a great company. When I spoke with your chairman or the president of Harley, they weren't even asking for it because they've been ripped off with trade so long that they were surprised that I brought it up. I'm the one that's pushing it more than they are. But it's unfair. And India sells us a lot of motorbikes. So when they have a motorbike, a big number, by the way, they have a company that does a lot of business. So they have a motorcycle or a motorbike that comes into our country, the number is 0. We get 0. They get 100%. Brought down to 75, brought down now to 50. Okay. And I wasn't sure. He said it so beautifully. He's a beautiful man. And he said, I just want to inform you that we have reduced it to 75, but we have further reduced it to 50. And I said, what do I say? Am I supposed to be thrilled? And that's not good for you people, especially as governors. It's just not right. And we have many deals like that. Now, with all of that being said, let's talk China. Because China, we probably lost $504 billion last year on trade. $504 billion. I think that President Xi is unique. He's helping us with North Korea, who, by the way, wants to talk. As of last night, you heard that. They want to talk. And we want to talk also only under the right conditions. Otherwise, we're not talking. You know, they've been talking for 25 years. Other presidents should have solved this problem long before I got here. And they've been talking for 25 years. And you know what happened? Nothing. The Clinton administration spent billions and billions of dollars. They gave them billions. They built things for them. They went out of their way, and the day after the agreement was signed, they continued with nuclear research. It was horrible. The Bush administration did nothing, both. The Obama administration wanted to do something. He told me it's the single biggest problem that this country has. But they didn't do anything. And it would have been much easier in those days than it is now. I think most people understand that. But we've been very tough with them. China's been good, but they haven't been great. China has really done more probably than they've ever done because of my relationship. We have a very good relationship. But President Xi is for China, and I'm for the United States. And Russia is behaving badly because Russia is sending in what China is taking out. So China's doing pretty good numbers, but Russia is now sending a lot of stuff in. But I think they want to see it come to an end also. I think everybody does. Talking about tremendous potential loss of lives, numbers that nobody's ever even contemplated, never thought of. So they want to talk. First time, they want to talk. And we'll see what happens. That's my attitude. We'll see what happens. But something has to be done. Today I want to hear your ideas on a number of critical issues. But most importantly, we want to discuss the public safety in schools and public safety generally. But school safety, we can't have this go on. I'm grateful that Governor Rick Scott is here, and we thank him for his leadership in the aftermath of the terrible tragedy in Parkland, Florida. Horrible. Our nation is heartbroken. We continue to mourn the loss of so many precious, innocent young lives. These are incredible people. I visited a lot of them. But we'll turn our grief into action. We have to have action. We don't have any action. It happens. A week goes by. Let's keep talking. Another week goes by. We keep talking. 2 months go by. All of a sudden, everybody's off to the next subject. Then when it happens again, everybody's angry, and let's start talking again. We got to stop. By the way, bump stocks, we're writing that out. I'm writing that out myself. I don't care if Congress does it or not. I'm writing it out myself, okay? You put it into the machine gun category, which is what it is. It becomes essentially a machine gun, and nobody's going to be able. It's going to be very hard to get them. So we're writing out bump stocks. But we have to take steps to harden our schools so that they're less vulnerable to attack. This includes allowing well-trained and certified school personnel to carry concealed firearm. At some point, you need volume. Now, I don't know that a school is going to be able to hire 100 security guards that are armed. Plus, you know, I got to watch some deputy sheriffs performing this weekend. They weren't exactly Medal of Honor winners, all right? The way they performed was, frankly, disgusting. They were listening to what was going on. The one in particular, he was early. Then you had 3 others that probably a similar.
All right, guys, you're watching this playback of President Trump meeting with the National Governors Association. He goes on to make this speech. We're going to kind of cut it down here, play back some of this later so you can hear what he had to say. But let's bring up this live ceremony in New York City. Full picture here with sound. This is the 1993 World Trade Center bombing ceremony to remember the 6 victims of that 25 years ago. Let's check it out.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave for the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Please sit. Good afternoon. I'm Alice Renewal, President and CEO of the 9/11 Memorial and Museum. It is my distinct honor to greet you and express our appreciation that you have joined us as we pay tribute to the 6 innocent people and an unborn child killed, and the over 1,000 who were injured in the first attack on the World Trade Center 25 years ago today. This past month at the Memorial and Museum, we have dedicated the entire month to commemorating this milestone anniversary. We've been particularly privileged to connect with survivors of the 1993 bombing, who in past years have observed this date privately, but had not previously honored the anniversary with a visit to this sacred site. Many of you who worked in the buildings or responded to the scene are here with us today. And on behalf of the entire Memorial and Museum family, we are deeply honored to have you with us for this solemn tribute. I also want to acknowledge and welcome members of the Memorial and Museum's Board of Directors, elected officials, and distinguished guests in attendance today, notably former New York City Mayor David Dinkins, who was in office at the time of the bombing. Thank you all for gathering with us on this somber anniversary here at the Memorial's North Pool to commemorate the lives of those taken far too soon. At the 9/11 Memorial and Museum, every day of the year, we remember the lives they led, and we stand with their families and their friends in solidarity and shared grief. For many of us, it is hard to believe that a quarter century has passed since that snowy winter day. The 1993 bombing was the first act of terrorism at this site. As we know all too well, it would not be the last. The date of February 26th is engraved in our memories, and so we gather together year after year to show our support for those who mourn and for those who experience the chaos, confusion, and terror firsthand. At this place, it is our sacred obligation and our privilege to preserve the history of this tragic event, pay tribute to the 6 innocent people whose names are etched in bronze on the panels beside us, and recognize the endurance of the survivors. We also honor the brave men and women who risked their lives to save others. I'd like to thank Kevin O'Toole, Chairman of the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, and Rick Cotton, Executive Director of the Port Authority, for also being with us today. The Port Authority and its staff have been stalwart leaders at this site, champions of rebuilding and renewal. Their dedication to remembrance and their demonstration of resilience have been models for all of us. I'd like now to invite Chairman O'Toole to provide a few brief remarks. Kevin.
Thank you. There's nothing I can say or the Port Authority can say to the families to console you, to understand your sorrow. 25 years ago, tragic event, took a loved one. And so I'm going to say the only thing I can say on behalf of the Port Authority is we're sorry. We're sorry for that day. We're sorry for your loss. that has stayed with you each and every day for the last 25 years. And I know those words won't mean much or do much, but that is all we can say. I talked to a first responder today who talked about as he walked into the basement and talked about what he came upon. I spoke to the first assistant for the police chief, who was one of the first individuals on the scene, and he said they were like descending into hell. I will tell you that in 1993, the world was very different. We were not ready for what visited us on that day. America was not ready for what visited them that day. And for that, I say I'm sorry. And we are sorry. But I will say this, on behalf of the Port Authority, each one of you, your family members and neighbors and uncles and aunts and grandchildren and co-workers of those 6 wonderful families, we will be here for you every single day. Today, tomorrow, 25 years from now. That is what I can tell you. Our condolences.
Thank you, Kevin. And now I'd like to invite Rick Otton to join me at the podium.
Thank you, Alison. Good afternoon. I'd like to echo the chairman's comments, Alice's comments, and express my heartfelt condolences to the families of the loved ones who lost their lives a quarter century ago. I'd also like to remember the more than 1,000 people who were injured that day in 1993 and the countless number of Port Authority staff and other individuals who will be forever emotionally scarred by having lived through that tragic attack and the subsequent events of 9/11. Each year since that tragic event, the family members of those who died in 1993 have returned to this site to pray and to grieve, keeping alive memories of their loved ones. Rest assured that the entire Port Authority grieves with you and will continue to do so always. Sadly, this tragic event was only the first of other ruthless attacks to come, including 9/11. The attacks serve as a reminder that we must always remain vigilant and take whatever steps are necessary to prevent additional incidents and loss of life. The best way we can pay tribute to those who were lost in 1993 is for this agency to make sure that no other family has to experience the pain and suffering you've lived with for the past 25 years. In closing, I'd like to thank the 9/11 Memorial and the museum and its president, Alice Greenwald, for hosting this remembrance ceremony every year so the family members have a fitting location to come and pay their respects to their loved ones. And I again say to the families, in the presence of your friends and all those gathered here today, on behalf of today's Port Authority, we stand with you, we grieve with you, and we will never forget. And we will commit to rise higher and stronger. That is the ultimate recognition we can give to those who are lost.
Thank you, Rick. On February 26, 1993, Charlie Makish was director of the World Trade Center Department at the Port Authority. In that capacity, he was the senior executive in charge of recovery and reconstruction at the World Trade Center after the bombing. We are so pleased to have him with us today to provide his own reflections on this milestone anniversary. Charlie.
Thank you, Alice. 200 feet south of where we stand today, 20 feet below the surface against the south wall of the North Tower. A quarter of a century ago, terrorists detonated a 1,600-pound bomb. The result of the bombing was catastrophic. It tore a crater the size of half a football field in the belly of the Trade Center, disabling the electrical, HVAC, communications, operating and life safety systems, and the elevator systems. It sent smoke and soot up the towers and some of the adjacent buildings into 10 million square feet of space. The blast wave itself also destroyed everything in its path: cars, walls, building contents, more importantly, taking human lives and injuring thousands. Though left disemboweled of its operating systems, flooded at its base, covered with soot and smoke, the structure, and thankfully most people survived, I'd say in large part due to the efforts of first responders, the Port Authority police, Port Authority staff, and its professionals. The restoration and recovery of the Trade Center was nothing short of miraculous. It demonstrated the resilience and the determination of the people of this incredible city and bi-state region. Early the following morning at a briefing of the two governors and the mayor's office, after they had seen the devastation, Governor Cuomo asked, how long would it take to restore and reopen the Trade Center? When we told him 10 months after the summer was over, we probably could reopen, he told us we didn't have 10 weeks. He said, or the towers would sit empty as monuments to the demise of the economy of the financial district, Lower Manhattan, and possibly the city itself. We were told to demonstrate resilience and ingenuity and not let the terrorists disrupt our way of life, and that became our motto for the recovery. The two states, New York and New Jersey, committed their full resources. The city of New York pledged its assistance, and the Port Authority Board did something that it had never done before. It authorized us to take any and all actions required for the full restoration and recovery of the World Trade Center. Under the direction of my deputy, Bob DiChiara, and the supervising engineer, Alan Reese, we marshaled an army of over 4,000 to restore the operating systems and the building infrastructure. It was really amazing. The labor unions came together as a team. And for the first time, we had carpenters carrying steel for the iron workers. We had electricians and plumbers pushing brooms to get the debris out of the way so they could get to their work. We had workers, laborers, and cleaners carrying furniture, which was not their job spec, so to speak. But we did everything we had to do. By the night of the bombing, by the way, the towers stood lit against the night sky. They were not going to stand there dark. A short 3 weeks after the bombing, on March 19th, we moved the first tenant back into the World Trade Center. It was Governor Cuomo into Tower 2. He commented that his law books were cleaner than the day 10 years earlier he had put them on the shelf. Following the governor, 100+ firms who had moved out of the 10 million square feet into temporary locations were moved back in, and within 3 months, we were fully operational with new security protocols, life safety, and communication systems, which, by the way, served us well on 9/11. The Trade Center was better and brighter than ever, and it had learned its lesson. Today, the 9/11 Memorial Museum has the artifacts that tell the story of the '93 World Trade Center bombing, as well as the World Trade Center's return and recovery. Speaking of the families, I must relate to you that on the 5th anniversary, we suggested to them that we hold a remembrance every 5 years thereafter. They told us that they come each year, not as a remembrance, but as part of a larger family, to bring comfort to each other, renew their strengths, and support each other in their future endeavors. We committed to them at that point that we would return each and every year, and we have. Of course, there are also many who have come each year from the World Trade Center staff, PA staff, first responders from '93, law enforcement, the prosecutors from the U.S. Attorney's Office.
And guys, as the ceremony continues in New York City to celebrate or commemorate rather the victims of the 1993 bombing, I actually see that Governor Rick Scott is up at the podium at that National Governors Association luncheon with President Trump. President Trump just spoke for a little while, and now Governor Scott is speaking. Of course, he'll likely be mentioning and talking about Florida and the situation there. So let's bring you a double screen here and bring up the volume on Governor Scott just for a second, then we'll come back to the ceremony in New York City.
juvenile justice, teachers, principals, local law enforcement, all together and say, what are the threat assessments in our schools? We're going to do that. Next, we're going to invest more dollars in mental health in our children and families program. We do that around our state, but we're going to invest more dollars to make sure we have youth teams all around our state to help them. Finally, you're not going in Florida have access to a gun. If you're struggling with mental illness, are you going to make violent threats? You're not going to have access to a gun in our state. You shouldn't have access to a gun, and you're not. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a violent threat restraining order that a family member, a mental health individual, or law enforcement can go to the court system. There'll be a due process, but they can make sure that you don't have access to a gun. If you've been involuntarily committed because you're a threat to yourself or others, you will not have access to a gun. You'll have to give those guns up. There'll be due process. You can get those guns back, but we're going to make sure that doesn't happen. We're going to make sure as you do background checks, all this information is out there so we can make sure we know who has the guns. So in our state, we are going to get all this done. I'm going to get it done in the next 2 weeks. I've been talking to my legislative leadership every day. They're committed to be a partner. But in Florida, I want to make sure every parent knows that their child is going to come home safe and sound every day. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Rick, and thank you, Brian, very much. Great job you've done, too, as chairman. Thank you. Kay, would you like to say, I think I can bring this over. It might be easier just to pass this around. Kay?
Thank you, Mr. President. Like you, I believe that the local officials have an awful lot of insight into what each school needs to provide public school safety. So as I mentioned a little earlier to this group, Mr. President, I suggested that we give our local folks a list of things that they can do quickly, like limit the number of entrances that a school has to enter the building, and then equip every child above the 6th grade with a chip-activated card to enter that entrance. And also, you can consider putting in a metal detector at 1 or 2 or 3 entrances, since you're limiting the number of entrances. Also, a surveillance system. And that surveillance system can be tied to the virtual Alabama Visual Center at the Education Department, so it's instant information all at the same time. Certainly training in mental health situation is fine, but for the immediate, I just think we need to give some guidance to our local people and limit the access to entrancing and equip with surveillance systems, metal detectors, or whatever they choose to do. Where's the money coming from? They've got some local money, but in our state budget, there's been a technology fund. And a senator and I are working, and he introduced the bill last week to be able to free up some of that money for use for school safety. So these are not costly things, but they're things that can be done immediately to improve school safety.
enforcement agencies, which takes about 6 months. Now, I just think this is a circumstance where we need to listen, that educators should educate, and they should not be foisted upon this responsibility of packing heat in first grade classes. Now, I understand you have suggested this, and we suggest things, and sometimes then we listen to people about it. Maybe they don't look so good a little later. So I just suggest we need a little less tweeting here, a little more listening, and let's just take that off the table and move forward.
All right, thank you very much. You know, we have a number of states right now that do that. And I think with that in mind, I'll call on Greg Abbott, great governor of Texas. Greg? Here, right here.
Texas authorized schools to adopt policies to implement a school marshal program where individuals would be trained to have a weapon and to be able to use that weapon. And we now have well over 100 school districts in the state of Texas where teachers or other people who work in the school do carry a weapon and are trained to be able to respond to an attack that occurs. Now, it's not always a school teacher. It could be a coach. It could be an administrator. It could be anybody who works in that school. But it's a well thought out program with a lot of training in advance. And candidly, some school districts, they promote it because they will have signs out front, a warning sign that be aware there are armed personnel on campus, warning anybody coming on there that if they attempt to cause any harm, they're going to be in trouble.
Well, I think that's great. And so essentially what you're saying is that when a sick individual comes into that school, they can expect major trouble, right? Major trouble. The bullet's going to be going toward him also. And I think that's great. And you know what's going to happen? Nobody's going into that school, Greg. That's a big difference. That was really well said. Thank you very much. Anybody? The governors are so quiet. I can't believe it.
Mr. President.
So well behaved today. I can't believe it.
We'll start acting up soon. Mr. President, I just want to say that in Arkansas, we have a very similar situation or program as what Greg has described in Texas. I have the belief that no teacher should be compelled, and most of them want to teach and focus on that, but others are concerned about their students and have training and specific capacity, if you've described, and so we have licensed certain school districts and those who want to be trained more significantly so that they can handle an active shooter situation. And so we have over 13 schools in Arkansas that can't afford a school resource officer. They prefer to have those either in the classroom or assistant coach or someone that would have a response capability. And that's the key thing. So that flexibility, I think what the governors want to say is that there can't be necessarily a national security plan, but the states can develop this. And we did make some recommendations back in 2012, though, in reference to federal grants. Some of the biggest expense is training. Some of the biggest expense will be hardening of our schools, as Governor Ivey suggested. And so I hope that your Department of Homeland Security and looking at some of the grants that come from DHS in terms of security fighting terrorists, some of that money can be utilized by local jurisdictions as well for the protection of number one priority of protecting our students and our schools.
Yes, and Governor, you know how well we're doing it. You know, it's a never-ending quest, but with respect to MS-13, and these people are really causing havoc in certain communities, and with school children and people walking home from school, what's going on, and we're moving them out by the thousands, but we have to get immigration laws that allow us to do what we have to be able to do. They are so soft. No country in the world has immigration laws so soft like we do. So that's also a part of it. I appreciate what you said. Thank you very much, Governor. Yes, Paul?
address the Congress and ask them to look at the HIPAA laws, particularly with mental illness, because we need help from the federal government to loosen up the law so that we can do the truly good background checks on people.
And that's what we're going to be doing. And as you know, Paul, we're really, I think, going to have the support of the NRA having to do with background checks, very strong background checks, and a very heavy section on mental health. Far different than what we've had in the past. Thank you, Paul. Yes, ma'am. Yes.
And give our perspectives, as each of our states are different. And as I've thanked you before, this was not something that we were engaged in before with previous administration. I do see that there is a huge pool of retired law enforcement officers where municipalities and counties have actually invested a lot of money into training them, and now they're retired. And often, because they are receiving a public retirement, they cannot go back into that similar kind of retirement plan. If they go into an educational plan, they can actually work for a school, be trained. The school doesn't have to train them, but also they can learn and figure out where cameras and different security pieces need to be implemented within the schools because of their experience and training. And so this is a pool of folks that we can immediately put out without having to expend a great amount of dollars in keeping our schools and our school personnel safe.
Yeah.
And the 25-year significance.
You know, 25 years, it's significant in a date. It's a quarter of a century. It's a long time. And time certainly helps, does help, heal things. It's interesting to think, I've been thinking a lot about 1993 when you think back in the context. Back then there was, there wasn't the outpouring that people get today, when tragedies happen. And I think, what happened is that people didn't want to think that you could go to work, in downtown New York and be sitting in your office having lunch and be killed. So I think that it was easy enough, as I said, they very quickly got the Port Authority reopened and showed the resilience, which then in 9/11 couldn't be done. And I think that's, there is a lot of talk of does 9/11 overshadow 93? Of course it does. It was much more devastating. More people were killed. And unfortunately for my mom, after 9/11, there was the Special Victims Compensation Fund, which Senator Schumer tried to get my mom included on, and, that didn't happen. So, so things like that. But, as a son, I have two responsibilities. One is to make sure that my father is remembered, which he is here in the beautiful museum and memorial, and, trying to get my mother taken care of.
The 25 years doesn't make it easier, though.
In some ways, time certainly does help. The wound is always there. I would, I'd say the scar tissue just gets stronger, but it's, certainly on any anniversary, and certainly on a big one like this, I think about it a lot. I think about my father and about that day, and all that he's missed. When I see my nieces and nephews here who he never got to meet, my sisters, he didn't get to see them married. We lost my mom a few years ago. He wasn't there for her while she was dying of cancer. You think about those things. Thank you. Thank you. It's Michael Macco, M-A-C-K-O. My father was William Macco, one of the 6 people killed in the first World Trade Center bombing.
I'm 54. Thank you. I was 25.
Part of the healing process. Seeing them, and just, when I'm going through bad time, I know that they're going to want me, but they're going through bad time. But I know who he is because we've gone through, we've had family members since then pass away. Members have joined all the families. It's a good time for us to just keep together. So your name and you lost Stephen there, the son of Stephen. How old are you? I am 44 right now. Okay. Thanks so much. Can you tell us what you're feeling today? Today, it's just more or less I'm going through. To me, today, this is more of a day of sadness. I explained before, I've gone through a whole host of emotions in the 25 years, the shock and sadness of when it first started, then going through the anger that somebody could actually do this. I remember, I always thought, you know, when the blind sheep passed away, I thought I'd be celebrating and popping open a beer, you know, being glad, but more or less after it really happened, it's more just a period of sadness. Just that there are people out there that do this, and it seems to be more prevalent today than ever. You know, there are really bad people out there, and, you know, 93 was a bomb. There was 9/11, they used the planes with the gun violence today. It's not the means they use, it's that there's just really sick people out there that want to do harm to innocent people who are just going about their daily lives. That's the part that makes me sad about this whole thing. And I think now more than ever, I think as I've grown older, I've gone through that range of emotions, and now the one thing that sticks with me is just the sadness that there are people out there that continually do this. And 93 was just the start of it in this country, and it seems like it's been building up and getting more and more escalated.
You mentioned the blind sheikh who died in prison last year after a life sentence.
Yes.
And so did the four bombers who were convicted in Rams Yusuf. They're all serving basically life sentences.
Yes.
I don't know if you attended the trials. I guess you were 19. You stand here today in contrast to 9/11 families who haven't really had a trial. Do you feel that you achieved and the other families achieved some sense of justice by the trials that were completed, and knowing that at least the perpetrators we caught, you know, were locked away for the rest of their lives?
The only thing I could see good about that was they weren't able to do any more damage than what they already had done. I know when I was younger, I would have loved to get my hands around their throats and just strangled them and taken the life from them. But at this point now in my life, like I said, I'm just very sad that this whole thing had to happen. And like I said, I thought I'd be celebrating and dancing when he passed away, but I didn't. I didn't react the way I thought I would. It was more or less just thinking about the whole event and things, and not really focusing on him anymore, and, you know, wishing that they were gone off the face of the earth. It was more or less now. I think as I've gotten older, it's more of a sadness that the thing even happened. That's really what it is.
Thank you.
He was the chief maintenance supervisor for the Port Authority at the Trade Center. So he was in charge of all the infrastructure, fire protection, life safety.
What's your name again?
Stephen Knapp.
Are you alone with your family today? I saw some young people, some older people. It's hard to tell who's with who.
Yeah, my whole family is here. Some aunts, uncles, my mother, sister,
children,
nieces, nephews. Yes, the family has grown since in 25 years. We've lost some family members, and we've gained some new ones.
Some of your father's grandchildren.
Yes, my father's grandchildren here. Never got to meet them, but they're here today, remembering him. So,
how many?
There are a total of 5.
I saw a young woman. That might have been one of them, one of his granddaughters.
There's a 13-year-old, 11, 9, and younger.
Thank you.
Do they understand why they're here?
Yes, I think as they're getting older, they're understanding it more. They've been coming since they've been born. We've been bringing them out here for this. So they're starting to understand it. They see how it affected the family and everything. And, you know, with school, they're starting to learn more about the events of 9/11 and 93 bombing. So with all that, they're starting to understand and grasp, you know, what today really is, what it means, and what we're doing out here today.
I missed the early part of your interview, but this is the remark.
Use can help define some things, that certainly understand the idea of hardening schools, but that seems like we're hardening potential military targets. I think we as leaders need to be saying we're going to do everything we can to make that school safe for the kids. I think that there are steps, and many of them you began to reference, that we could take that could make a difference. If we can look at this as a public health issue. You mentioned the NICS system. We can improve the instant check system. And we also know about a quarter of the guns that are sold don't even get into that system. So a universal background check. We know that 10% of our homicides each year are in intimate relationships. So the orders of protection, the domestic violence, making sure that's in NICS. As Governor Scott mentioned, red flag laws, making sure that law enforcement and families have a way, still using due process, to actually remove guns from people that might be that imminent threat. I applaud you on bump stocks. That's one of those things that there is no other reason. And we could certainly look at the higher magazine capacity as well as one of those things that you probably don't need. And I encourage you as you go on the path of looking at what you can do in schools. I used to be Attorney General and ran the Law Enforcement Academy too, and graduate these peace officers each and every year. I want to make sure if somebody is armed in a school, that they have that training, that we know that he or she, it's much more, as I think you recognize, than just carrying concealed, that they have that training that I as a parent can say that this person under pressure will know what to do with a firearm before we start introducing the firearms into our schools. I think we're at a unique, hopefully we're at a unique moment where certainly, as I said, 43 times since I've been governor, been asked to lower the flags. 12 of them have been for mass shootings in the last 5 years. It's almost on the one hand to the point that we're getting desensitized, but on the other hand, here is a moment where everybody's talking, where we can hopefully start saying, what could actually meaningfully impact this, not just for today, but for the future. So thank you so much, and I hope that those areas you'll certainly take both the bully pulpit and the leadership in Congress.
Thank you very much. Great points. It was great being with you last night. You mentioned two words, under pressure. And a lot of people never really know what that means because, they train a whole life. Look at Peterson. Look what he did in Broward, where he thought he was probably a brave guy, but he wasn't a brave guy. Under pressure, he choked, and other people choked. I mean, a lot of people choked in that case. And we have to have people trained. We have to, you have to have some kind of a budget where it works. When many of the governors happen to, like the idea of trained people within schools, but the press has to get the word out honestly. For instance, I went through a very detailed, it could be 10%, could be 5%, could be 20%. These are really gun-adept people. Very few people would qualify. On top of being gun-adept, they have to go to school and they have to learn, and maybe there'll be a bonus given to those people, and maybe there should be, frankly, because they should go on a yearly basis to school. They start with training and then they have additional training every year, and I think they should get a bonus, but it's a very small amount of money compared to what it would cost. I think it would be very effective. But when the press covered it, the headline was, Trump wants all teachers to have guns. Trump wants teachers to have guns. I don't want teachers to have guns. I want highly trained people that have a natural talent, like hitting a baseball or hitting a golf ball or putting. How come some people always make the 4-footer and some people under pressure can't even take their club back, right? Some people can't take their club back. And you don't know what it is. Those words are, those words are hard to train for, but you want to have the number of people where people know they're going to be, the bad guy has to understand that there's a big price to pay when they mess around with our students. You can't just say, oh, we're going to, harden our schools. We're going to blow smoke into the rooms. We're going to do all this stuff that is not going to work. You have to let people know that they're going to suffer the ultimate price. And you know what? And I said it before, you're not going to have incidents. They're not going to do it because they're innately cowards. But I love what you said. I agree very much with what you said. Question? Governor? Phil?
Mr. President, October the 1st of 1997, Luke Woodham, 16-year-old student, came into Pearl High School in Pearl, Mississippi, after he had bludgeoned his mother to death that morning with a .30-30 lever action rifle, killed 2 students, and began to shoot at others. A vice principal who was an Army Reserve officer went to his vehicle, retrieved his 1911 .45, and stopped that shooter before he could kill other children in Pearl, Mississippi. When I heard you speak of your idea, that was the concept I believed in. Find that Army Reserve vice principal, give him the training he necessarily needs, arm him, and stop this madness.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Well,
sir.
many of these people are teachers, too. They're retired. They're 20 years in the Marines. They can handle a weapon world class. They don't even need the training, but they should get it anyway. Everybody should have very strong training. But, you know, you have many like General Kelly standing back there. I wouldn't mind if he was a teacher. I'd like him to be our teacher. And if he happened to be concealed, carrying concealed, I'd feel very good about that. That to me is better, and he's on the site. Don't forget the other thing, Phil. They're on the site. They're not outside. They're not 20 minutes away in a police station where an alarm rings and they go, and by the time they get there, they don't know the school, they don't know the floors. These people know everything intimately. I think it works. Look, I've been watching this I've only been doing this for 2.5 years. After that, I was a civilian, and I had a nice life. I had a very easy, nice, beautiful life. I actually got great press. I was the king of getting good press, Governor. You know that? It was only when I did this that I got bad press. But you know what? I've been watching this, folks, from a different slant. Many of you, most of you have been politicians for a long time. I've been watching you, I've been watching everybody for 30 years. I've been watching this situation. Nothing's done. It's the same thing. Nothing's done. They have a meeting, they all go home. 2 weeks later, it's a little bit sadly, and I hate to say it, other than the parents who are so devastated and the families that are so badly affected and the people that were hit. You know, nobody ever talks about the wounded. They talk about the 17 dead, but I saw people that were so seriously wounded. Nobody ever talks. The maniac on the West Side Highway that ran over 8 people, they keep saying he killed 8 people. He just it's essentially a park. It's like a beautiful stretch along the Hudson River that I know so well. He's going down 80 miles an hour down the West Side Highway, and he said, hey, look at those people. I'm going to turn it. And he killed 8 people. What they don't talk about are the 14 people that were devastated. They go to put themselves in shape and to work out, and they're very proud, and they end up missing a leg and missing an arm, or missing 2 legs and an arm. And nobody ever talks about those people. They talk about the people, obviously, that died. They don't talk about the people that are so devastated. And you have that. You have many people. I saw a lot of those people. You know, hopefully they're going to be okay after a long time in rehab. But a lot of them won't be. And we got to remember them too. Those people are great people. Got to remember them too. Okay, how about 1 or 2 more? Yes, Governor.
Again, thank you. I've enjoyed hearing from...
Quick note, guys, if you are just joining us inside the D.C. newsroom here, we're watching a meeting from just moments ago. President Trump, with many of the governors who were there in this room with him in the White House, discussed business, and of course, school safety is of utmost importance to talk about today as we're continuing these discussions and people are bringing up their ideas. It seems to be sort of more of a commentary Q&A type of scenario with President Trump hosting and offering up his opinion and giving some information on what he feels with gun safety now in schools. And you can see now the camera is sort of panning the audience. There's the Vice President also. So again, this is part of this week of the National Governors Association meeting, where many of the governors are here in D.C. for this annual meeting with the President. And we're going to listen in a little more. I think most people are covering this right now. I don't want to miss something that he says. I think he's going to take a few more questions. And then we're going to come back into the newsroom and discuss some other news of the day related to all this stuff as well. Other things that are popping out to us here in the newsroom. So stay on with us here on the stream. And thanks for joining us as always.
Based on their own politics, based on their own unique demographics, and we'll learn from each other. We'll find what works, and we'll homogenize probably together. But the states, these little pilot programs, that's the beauty of our concept of federalism and these states out there finding solutions to the problems that ail the people. This is the problem of today. Safety in our schools. I look to learn from all of you as we tried our own way in Utah to find a solution to this very critical and timely issue. Thanks for your
Thank you,
leadership.
Governor. I appreciate it. And you said something very important. The states can do these various programs without the federal government also. And we're there to help, and we'll help monetarily, which is very important because a lot of the school budgets especially, they don't have the money. I mean, where are they going to get the money to put 100 guards into the school in Parkland? I mean, it's very tough. It's a tough situation. But the federal government can help out. But a lot of these solutions that we talk about, whether you agree with me or you agree with somebody else, you can do them pretty much by yourselves within your state. Like our great governor of Texas, Greg, we have an attitude on retribution. Because I say the only way you stop it is retribution. I don't think you're going to stop it by being kind. I don't think you're going to stop it at all. You're going to have problems. But if a state feels that way, I say you have to go and you have to do what you have to do. I guess we have 9 states that are doing what you're doing, Greg, at least 9, and some are coming, and they're coming fast. But the states can do a lot of this work themselves. They can do most of it. And we'll back you up, regardless of what you want to do. If you agree or disagree with the state of Texas and other states that do it differently, I think that's fine. Just go and do it yourself. We will be there to help you no matter what your solution is. But this is largely a state issue in terms of that school security. And in many cases, it's a local issue. You know, in many cases, you don't even need approval from the state. You can go in as a school district and do what you have to do for the safety of your children. So my attitude is get it done and get it done properly. It is an honor to be with you, so many friends, and we're going to see you a little bit later. But I think this was a really great meeting. And Brian, I want to thank you very much. Thank you very much. Fantastic job. Thank you. Thank you very much, Senator. I appreciate it very much. I'll see you in a little while. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, guys, we're back in the newsroom here. Thanks for watching on our stream today. I'm here with Sam from the newsroom, one of our web producers, to chat a little more. We've been talking about the shooting, of course, the Parkland shooting and all the fallout from that, school safety, where people are going with this. In fact, the vice president is up right now. I'll show you a little live, or rather not live, but just a few moments ago. President Trump was speaking with the Governors Association. Now the vice president is speaking a little bit. Well, we took all of the president's remarks, and not surprisingly, a lot of it was talking about what people are going to do, what schools are going to do in each individual state to kind of combat this. And each governor kind of had his or her own comment on this and opinions on this, and just, it's basically the talk of everything, right? The news, social media.
Yeah.
In fact, we're going to show you in a little bit a video from this morning. One of the survivors, Maddy Wilford, actually had the chance to speak out with her parents and some of her medical providers. She is a survivor of the shooting, and she was providing the public with some information about what it was like and her hope for the future. It's pretty crazy.
That's really tough.
So we're going to show that after this, but first I wanted to chat with Sam because she brought it to my attention this morning. A cool story over the weekend was this thing about colleges. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so a lot of these students that were involved, the ones at the shooting, obviously it was a high school, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, and a lot of other high school students around the country have kind of come out in sympathy and in support of these guys, because a lot of high schoolers have been just trying to be a strong force behind changes for different kinds of gun laws, both in school and you know, out in public. So a lot of them are high school, a lot of rising seniors or students that are applying to colleges or have already accepted where they're going to go. So a lot of them were concerned because they staged these protests and they've been doing more things and have kind of struggled with administration in different high schools.
Both locally and we hear about it everywhere.
There was a small district in Texas outside of Houston where the superintendent sent out a letter and he said if anybody leaves school for a protest, you're going to be suspended for 3 days. I don't know of any local specific words of discipline, but I mean we did the principal. I mean, a bunch of the administration in Montgomery County, they're like, well, we don't condone this. There wasn't any specific words of like, we're going to suspend. They just said like, we don't condone this. Your attendance is still going to be taken. So they might have missed a day of school, but I don't think they were being suspended as far as I'm aware. So that was one instance in Texas. So there's just been a lot of controversy. Like, do I, speak out and say how I feel, or do I just stay in school and not worry about not getting into trouble because I have,
next year's college,
I have college and grades and all that stuff. So a lot of
interesting. Yeah, that's coming to light in the news. We're going to show you in a little bit how some of the colleges and universities across the nation, some of the top tier colleges and universities are reacting to this. These walkouts and these protests. But I will say, just on a personal note, when this all happened and we saw the bravery of these students and how freeing it was in protests and whatnot, I was personally thinking, this is so interesting. Go and write your college essay about this. This is your senior year. This is a big, especially for the people that it hit very close to home too in Florida, but even the people that are just feel inspired because school safety is now the talk, and it's something that we have to take very importantly into consideration. And as the officials that we see right here, are speaking right now about what they can do to make these schools safer, it's a huge topic. And so I automatically was just like, this is so interesting. Go into your senior year and like embrace this and write about it. And now colleges are coming out and saying, hey, we accept this, and not even just accept, but beyond. We want to see this.
Yeah,
isn't that neat?
Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting. I know you'll probably take this to heart because we're both hippie kids, but the idea that a lot of political activism has kind of just become more of a regular thing as opposed to something that was more of a hush-hush kind of thing that it was between the Women's March and the Me Too movement. Like people are more, I think there was a lot of criticism of social media when that became such a big thing that people were just tweeting about it and not doing anything. So I think a lot of people took to the streets to figure out what other causes, to address publicly and in person whatever causes they felt close to heart. I mean, it's been across the board, both with the more of the progressive sides versus the more conservative sides of things. I mean, even more conservative movements have come out. I mean, the white nationalist rallies have also been just more of a physical stance as opposed to just online. So the fact that these kids are trying to take this issue and take to the streets, which was such a popular thing in the 60s and 70s.
Very true. Wow.
You know, we're kind of seeing
that's come full circle.
It's come full circle. So,
and interestingly, I want to tease out related to this on March 24th, in a couple of weeks. Actually, just about a month from now, a couple weekends to go, the March on Washington, this march and rally with the youth and students is reported to be happening here in D.C., and we're already seeing numbers, I think, in the 500,000s that will actually come to Washington, march on Washington, and make their voices heard. Now, we'll see what the attendance actually is, but we are going to be covering that in-house here, flashing it out to the National Mall, where I believe this is going to be happening, having some reporters out there in the field, and we'll be covering that digitally. So if you're on with us, if you're a subscriber to our channel, or you watch us on Facebook or on YouTube, definitely flag that date. It's a Saturday, March 24th. We'll be covering that march, and that'll be pretty interesting. I know Sam and I will be in-house here to kind of talk about it and to see what's going on in the National Mall. We'll have a lot of coverage. So that is sort of the big, I think, coming to a head. That's the big march, I believe, that they're talking about.
Yes.
Here in DC, and you know, we get a lot of those things in DC because it's our nation's capital and people want to make their voices heard. But what I really found interesting, and Sam gave me this idea to put together a little board of some of the top colleges and universities that have come out to say blatantly in these tweets, hey, at X university, we support students participating in this type of thing as they apply to colleges, and they won't see any negative effects, I guess, in their application or in their admission.
Right. Yeah. In a lot of schools, these are like top tier universities, but you know, it's been a nice mix. A lot of them are New England schools. I went to college in New England, so obviously. You have Yale up.
So here's our board, guys. Without further ado, check it out. We'll start with this one. Yale tweeting out, here at Yale, we're proud to support all students for participating in peaceful walkouts for gun control or other causes, and we will not rescind admissions decisions for students who do so, regardless of any school's disciplinary policy. And they have a link to their statement. I know I put together a few of these, and a lot of them link a bigger statement here. This is my university, and they tweeted out this statement from the president. I went to Wake Forest, so it's a personal connection for me, and we'll get to what they say in a later tweet, because I put them both in here. But they linked it to the president's statement saying that nothing, no disciplinary action will be taken. Please do this and, you know, tell us about it. American right here in DC.
Yep. They said American University stands by prospective students engaged in peaceful and lawful protests. No student who is admitted or has a pending application will be affected by disciplinary actions arising from their right to protest. And there has been, you know, more of a push towards peaceful protests. This isn't just like, you know, go march through the streets. People have been kind of like raising their eyebrows. All right, go let them protest, but then if they cause trouble. But the colleges don't want people to cause trouble. This is my alma mater, Mount Holyoke, and Mount Holyoke has always championed a lot of different causes. They were a really big supporter of the Women's March. It's a women's college, so that makes a lot of sense. So they said MHC 2022. Oh
I know, that's crazy.
That's crazy to hear. And high school students, Mount Holyoke students, are social activists. We support you fully as you lead peaceful demonstrations against gun violence. They will not negatively affect your admission decision. #Parkland students speak.
Do you remember your whole process with writing the essay and getting
in there?
Man,
yeah.
Right? I mean, you're
it's nerve-wracking.
It is, and as a high school senior, you know, maybe you're in a different place than you are now. I definitely am, but you know, you're thinking about something you need to write about. Admissions is a whole process. They've gotten harder over the years.
Yeah.
And so
now it's more competitive because more people are applying to schools.
Way more competitive, and you can see that students could possibly be nervous. Hey, I want to take part in this. It means something to me. But these universities are coming out and saying this is a good thing. We support this. Going on to Brandeis, I believe. Yep, in New England too. Brandeis supports students' rights to stand up for their beliefs. Those who participate in peaceful protests will not jeopardize their admission to Brandeis. Speak up, speak out. Again, a focus here on peaceful protesting specifically. And then scrolling through again, here's UCLA. They have a big statement. You can read there on the left, but you say supporting students who use their right to peacefully demonstrate and have their voices heard. We stand with you. So they have a little graphic attached. Smith up there as well.
Yeah, Smith and Mount Holyoke are right up next to each other in Western Massachusetts. I took a couple classes there. Peaceful protest is something that our students do before they arrive at Smith. It's something that they do while they're at Smith, and it's something that they do after.
So they
Smith.
made a kind of a cute little statement.
Before, during, and because there are a lot of women who are on the front lines and who are involved in
different issues.
Yeah. I'm blanking. I'm trying to remember the alumni from Smith that is an activist. Gloria Steinem. I can't remember if she went to Smith or if she went to Wellesley.
Okay.
Or Bryn Mawr. She went.
girls.
She went to another women's college. So
very
So
interesting.
there are a lot of people involved who go to women's colleges to go on to be in politics and other programs.
That's a good one. Here is Clark, also in New England.
It's in Massachusetts.
Yep.
Yeah.
This was sort of this third, you can see 3 of 3. It's a third of 3 tweets, but it's saying, we want to be clear, admissions offers are not going to be affected by suspensions or other actions at your high school that may result from your positive and constructive participation in walkouts, demonstrations, or other peaceful protests. A few more here. This was Clark's second tweet. They were just kind of delineating what they thought about it and their motto. And they made a statement. So a lot of people, this is cool. A lot of detail here coming out saying, we know you guys are doing this. UConn saying, if you've been applied or admitted, or been admitted, it's not going to be taken away. It's not going to affect our decision.
General Association is holding a newser.
Also Massachusetts, like you said, a lot of New England.
Yeah.
Northeastern Mass, reassuring students who've applied that it won't jeopardize them.
Once again,
Brown, Providence, where I'm from. This is very Brown to me. Expect a socially conscious, intellectually independent campus. So telling students that when you come here, expect this, because this is important to us. So you can be assured that doing this is not going to affect our decision on you. It's very interesting.
UMass
Amherst.
Students, if you participate in peaceful protests against gun violence and receive school discipline for walking out, staging your protests, etc., please rest assured that you can report it to UMass Amherst and we won't hold it against you.
A lot of people using that hashtag too.
Parkland students speak. Yeah, I think that's one that came out when
they were speaking out.
Yeah, when they were speaking out.
The day
so
after, I think.
David Hogg has been a huge leader for a lot of these students.
Yeah.
So
this one's right in our backyard, GW. Here, I'll do a double screen here for us. So right here in DC, telling that, hey students, we support your right to advocate for yourselves and for your freedoms and in peaceful protest, and it won't affect our admissions decision. A lot of them, like I said, linking to that full statement. Dartmouth in New England, New Hampshire. There's their official statement there, and that graphic on the left telling students to speak their truth. Tulane.
That's the first Southern school.
It is. That I've seen.
I mean, Tulane is still a top-ranked university. I think it is interesting to point out that a lot of these schools are New England or the Ivy League schools, which have a certain, caliber, but the environment is very different. I went to Mount Holyoke, which is a women's college in New England, and it is more on the Democratic side with a lot of the views of students. A lot of students have more progressive or liberal thoughts, but at the same time, it was interesting being in a mix of people because I had friends from Missouri, and my college roommate was from Mississippi, and Massachusetts, and Texas, and California. So it was a nice mix being at a liberal arts school, but I think it does show what kind of schools would post their statement pretty soon after. I mean, a lot of gun control and the people who are more hard on gun advocacy or gun control would be more from the blue states. I mean, it is kind of a, I mean, it's hard. It is hard because a lot of parents are saying this is a obvious decision. We need to make things stricter for our students, for our kids, and at the same time, people do find it controversial because in different places, especially the South, it is more of a commonly accepted thing to have a gun, and there's more open carry laws or concealed carry laws in those states. I mean, in Maryland, where I live, it's definitely a blue state. We have a Republican governor, but you know, a lot of the people who live here are more wary of guns. I mean, there isn't a lot of hunting here. There is a decent amount of hunting, but not a ton.
Yeah.
And it's different being versus in the South or out West where there's more wildlife and different reasons that people like just the social expectation is different. So it's just it kind of divides people, even though it's happening in Colorado. These shootings have happened in Colorado and Florida,
everywhere,
in California and Washington and
Texas, Vegas.
Yeah, so it's happened everywhere. So I feel like as these things happen, people are starting to reconsider. And
I wasn't too surprised to see Tulane, only because it is in that top tier kind of chunk of schools, and they're trying to attract the top brightest, the best of the best students who, like you said, may have a proclivity to do this type of protest, and they want to ensure them that they don't have anything to worry about. And then UVA, also kind of close to here, back home, close, 2.5 hours away in Charlottesville.
And that's where, the
white supremacist rally, right?
Mm-hmm.
They said, this is the dean, I guess, and the dean.
So this is an associate dean.
Okay.
Dean J. I'm sorry, I'm blanking on her name, but that's what she goes by on social media, Dean J. So she's an associate dean, but she posted the dean of admissions a screenshot of his statement.
Wow, and in this one specifically, that he mentions, in that screenshot, he mentions Marjorie Stoneman Douglas.
He mentions the shooting and says that UVA, that the UVA community is grieving for students with families, those with families affected by
Isn't that crazy?
the shooting.
So it happened on Valentine's Day. Obviously, students may or may not have already made their decisions, but applications are probably in, and that's where, because they usually go in the winter.
Yep, it's probably around now.
And just around now is sort of like the deadline. So you wonder how many students, are participating in this and are kind of wary, like, oh man, like I put all these in, and now they're going to see that I'm actually in my later transcripts, I was in trouble because I participated in this.
I was a rebel.
Right? And then we go back to MIT. This was
this is president.
Professor or president.
I think he's the president of the school.
And he has a check mark. Students disciplined by your high schools for joining responsible anti-gun protests. You won't get your admission rescinded at MIT. And there's a link to their a blog post on their admissions site. And then back to the beginning at Yale. So anyway, we put this collection together. It was a great idea, Sam, because we were talking about this article from the weekend, and it definitely had a lot of social buzz this weekend, right?
Yeah. It's I first found out about it, I think, on Friday, because a friend of mine is at grad school UMass, so she posted UMass, and then by Saturday, BuzzFeed had a similar story up, and then a bunch of other schools over the weekend started to post their responses on social media. I think American was one that came out later on Saturday or Sunday. So I am curious to see if there's any more that come out during the week. I was looking to see, because we follow a lot of the local colleges here in DC, and I haven't seen anything yet. Please correct me if you see something else, but Howard University or Maryland.
I didn't look at Georgetown, but
Georgetown. I didn't see over the weekend.
Yes, I specifically looked at my alma mater, Wake Forest, and they had a great statement there. So I know we didn't really show it, but it links to a statement from our president, and it was cool to see. I actually, when you mentioned, I looked at Mount Holyoke, I was like, let me look up mine. So a few, down there in the South, and I went to school in North Carolina, which is another, I guess, not deep South, but still down there.
That's true. Wake is a Southern school,
but Southern, definitely Southern, a mix of people from the North and the South, but has progressive notions, and our president has been known to speak out in support of students in so many ways, and I thought that was cool to see. I was actually really happy to see that, and Sam turned me on to that this morning, because it was it's a new time. We're not in college anymore. We don't know what it feels like.
We're so out of touch.
To do things in high school that could change your trajectory, or like how you're viewed, I guess, by universities, because it is a different time with all that stuff. So this is kind of a cool story, and it'll be neat to see, like I said, just teasing out one more time, March 24th, that march on Washington, and see how many students are represented. I'm sure our reporters out in the field will get a ton of interviews with kids that are down there in the mall, letting their voices be heard, because they want to talk to cameras. They want to be seen. I think that'll be a fun one. So we're going to be here in the newsroom covering that. So tons more just kind of circulating from this shooting, which is, the only silver lining and the positive coming out of this, really. Like, we saw this horrible event, but now students are getting together. They're making their voices heard. They're strong enough and old enough to do something like this, unlike the Sandy Hook kids, obviously, who were babies and their parents were trying to, make change happen and stuff. So now there are things being done. And as you saw earlier, this is just playback from President Trump. You saw him talk about, and he's doing it right here, they're playing this back again, that what he wants to do, what his steps are going to be, and he's going to try to get the states on his side, and we'll see what becomes of this. But slowly but surely, they are talking about making more changes. And he even mentioned on the podium just a few moments ago, this happens all the time and nothing's ever done. People sit in their offices and they leave after 2 weeks later and we forget about it. But this time, I believe it was the first time in a long time we saw him tweet specific changes that he wants to be done by Congress. So, we'll see where this goes, and hopefully this conversation with some of the governors makes some change.
Yeah, I'm curious on the local level if there's anything that we'll see. I mean, obviously the president taking a lead on this is really important because then other places will follow suit. So that's good.
Thanks, Sam. And speaking of the Parkland shooting, I'm going to play out now this video from just a few hours ago. This morning, one of the survivors, Maddy Wilford is her name, she spoke out on a board with her parents and with some of the medical staff that helped her through essentially whatever she needed being a survivor of the Parkland shooting. And I actually haven't heard a first-hand account like this, so it'll be interesting to hear. It's a quick sort of session that they held in Broward County in Deerfield Park, Florida. So we're going to play that out to sort of close out this topic. But thank you guys for joining along with us, and let us know if you have any thoughts or comments on what we're discussing. It was good to have Sam in-house.
Thanks for having me on. Yeah.
I know you've been working on some interesting stories yourself. You're going back to detail something that you're working on that's pretty interesting, right?
Oh yeah.
Tease it out.
Yeah. Well, the story that we're working on, it's on our website, fox5dc.com. There's a story that we're working on actually in partnership with Fox 5 in Atlanta. There is a man who is a CDC employee, and he went missing from his home about 2 weeks ago, and he hasn't been found yet, and he kind of disappeared. He works at the CDC, he went home sick, he didn't show up to work next day, and his boss tried to get a hold of him because he didn't make a formal, I'm not coming in today call. And then I guess they got a hold of his parents, and then his parents drove up. They're from Maryland, in Southern Maryland, in Waldorf.
Angle here.
Yeah, so we're working on that. Our reporter Anjali Hemphill is, I think she's down that way working on that now.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think the family. Yeah, he's 35. He went to Harvard for grad school, and I think Morehouse College in Georgia. So he's a smart guy and educated, and his family had said there was a piece that the New York Times had actually put out, which brought to our attention the piece about his parents being from Waldorf. But
so
they
wallet
said
left behind, passport all found in his house. Windows were open. I think his dog was there.
Oh, I didn't
that's
see
what
the
I
part about the dog. But
Everyone's talking about the story, but
it's still
you're working on the
crazy.
details. Yeah, and we'll have to see what happens. More details if he's found. If they're implying that. I don't know, that something happened to him at the hand of someone else, or at
well,
his
they
own
said
hand.
that the door was locked, the garage was closed, there was a window open though, and then his wallet and his keys and his car were all at home. And so his parents, I'm sure, are really
so scary.
scared.
Do you think we're going to end up talking to his parents today? Is that what Anjali is trying to do?
No, I don't know if they're trying to get a hold of other family. I missed the beginning of her little call into the newsroom while she was working on this story. But I think the family, his parents are probably in Georgia trying to figure out what the heck happened to him.
Okay, they're going to.
So I don't know if they're here right now.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I wonder what kind of leads will be made. Well, we're going to keep you guys in tune with that story, and we'll be watching for more details on that. Thank you, Sam, for your insights.
No problem.
Let's go over to this sit-down panel with one of the survivors from Parkland. Hear her speak out with her parents about her experience, and yeah, this will be interesting to listen to, I think. Thanks, Sam.
Good morning. My name is Lieutenant Laz O'Hare, saying that Providence had played a big part in saving Maddy's life. name is Lieutenant Laz Ojeda. I'm with the Coral Springs Fire Department. First of all, I want to give God all the glory. I want to echo Miss Wilford's words through her Facebook post, saying that Providence had played a big part in saving Maddy's life. Second of all, I want to thank my department for all the training we've gotten, our fire chief. I want to thank my captain, Captain Pluchino, and you'll see that as the story goes, you'll see what a big part he had to play. I didn't do this alone. I was on a rescue with 5 other people. Their names are driver engineer Robert Lubinger, firefighter paramedic Jeffrey Unger, firefighter paramedic Will Glover, and Captain John Pluchino. That day started like any other day. We had run some calls, and when the call came in, we were almost dumbfounded. We couldn't believe it. Our station is at the southernmost point of the city. And when the call came in, there was so much going on that we, for some reason, we weren't dispatched right away. Our captain took the initiative of self-dispatching us, putting us on the call. I believe we were the 3rd rescue on scene. And when we got there, I looked at the organized chaos, which is what we firefighters work under, organized chaos. And I actually asked Captain Pluchino, I go, Cap, in a few minutes, I'm going to get a patient. I'm going to need staffing. And his words to me were, don't worry, Laz, we'll stick together as a crew. At that point, Maddy was brought to us. And I want to digress a little bit, because what happened inside that school, as it was related to me by Will Glover, who saw Officer Fernandez. And Sarge, I'm sorry I missed your last name, I can't pronounce it. But when they were clearing the rooms, at first sight, it was believed that Maddy had deceased. She looked very pale. And at that point, Officer Fernandez shook her to elicit a response from her. And I believe she gasped or she moved, but she made signs of life. At that point, he asked a nearby BSO SWAT officer to come over, and that officer put a chest seal on Maddy. I come to find out after the fact that Maddy had a tension pneumo. And I'm not a doctor, but in my estimation, that chest seal prevented that tension pneumo from progressing and perhaps killing her sooner. I thank that officer. I thank Officer Fernandez for bringing her to her. So back to when I got Maddy on the back of the rescue. When we got Maddy on the back of the rescue, we right away went to work. The officer had put the chest seal. He had also wrapped an emergency bandage around the chest seal. And she had a pretty bad injury to her right elbow, which we dressed right away. We started working on her. She was in what we call decompensated shock. Her blood pressure was very low for us. At that time, driver engineer Lubinger started an IO on her right shoulder. We started infusing fluids. We gave her oxygen. Her oxygen saturation went from the 70s to the hundreds. I want to say something that I thought was, because I also teach EMT at high school, and I'm always stressing how the basic things are more important than some of the advanced procedures we perform. I looked at Maddy, and she didn't look 15 because we had been told to take her to Broward General. Someone said it. I didn't see who said it. It's 30 miles away from the school, 30 miles, with a patient in decompensated shock. I looked at her. I gave her a sternal rub. I go, hey, how old are you? No response. Second sternal rub. hey, how old are you? She came around. She told me she was 17. So at that point, I looked at Will and I go, Will, we're going to North Broward. It's only 10 miles away. So the rest of the story is pretty simple. We revitalized her in the back. We reanimated her with fluids, gave her oxygen. We came over here, and this place was, wow, the hospital. I've never seen so many doctors, so many staff in an ER, because when we got there, we transferred her to the gurney, and we gave a report to the nurse, and we went back to work. That's all I got for you.
Morning. My name is Dr. Boyer. I'm the medical director for the Department of Emergency Medicine at Broward Health North. Our goal is to take this in a sequence give you guys kind of a timeline of what occurred real time. First and foremost, we're just honored and privileged to be sitting here with Maddy at this table here. So that is the best thing that we could celebrate today, for sure. The logistics of the operation from pre-hospital to hospital care, we implemented what we call a code green when we got the pre-hospital pre-alert that there was going to be potentially mass casualties. So from an operational point of view, when the pre-hospital personnel was doing their due diligence on the scene, from a hospital point of view, we're mobilizing multiple resources. And included in that is we gear up our emergency department in order to care for multiple patients simultaneously. And we got the enormous support of our entire hospital system, multiple surgeons, physicians, administrators, radiology, environmental services, registration, you name it, every single aspect. There's multiple moving parts and we all work synergistically. So then when pre-hospital personnel arrives at our facility, we could determine exactly who's going to care for patients and have it occur in a seamless process. So at that stage, when Maddy was brought to us, her care was put right in the hands of Dr. Nietzsche Parenko, who I'm going to pass the microphone to, so he could discuss with you.
Good morning, everybody. Dr. Nietzsche Parenko, Trauma Medical Director, Broward Health North. I was also a trauma surgeon on call. And when I received code green notification, mass casualty event, I was in the emergency room with my trauma team and with the rest of the hospital personnel. The information that we usually get is very short, but very important. That time we had 3 pediatric patients coming to us with multiple gunshot wounds. One of them was Maddy. What I knew about her was multiple gunshot wounds to the chest, abdomen, and right upper extremity. She was also in hemorrhagic shock. When Maddy came in, she was pale, she was not responsive, she was in shock. Immediately, she had to go chest tube placement because her wounds on the chest were very severe with massive bleeding. Initially, the chest tube was placed, which relieved the tension pneumothorax, which actually saved her life. Massive transfusion protocol, something that we start right away on patients in massive hemorrhage, was initiated. Central line catheter was placed. Blood was given. Multiple blood products were given. Fast exam was done at the bedside. It's an ultrasound that will look for any injuries in the chest and abdomen. When we found fluid in her abdomen, she was taken to the operating room within 10 minutes. What we also did is called damage control surgery. We knew that she had multiple injuries to the chest, abdomen, and arm, but we had to prioritize her treatment. So initially she went for explanatory laparotomy, for damage control surgery in her abdomen, which she did extremely well. Her second surgery was damage control in the right upper extremity, bleeding and soft tissue damage. And her third surgery was thoracotomy with ORF of her ribs, which were shattered from gunshot wound. So all those 3 surgeries were done in the manner of her being completely resuscitated and ready to undergo multiple procedures. As a result, her hospital stay was less than 7 days. She did very well postoperatively, and she was discharged home last Wednesday. All I want to say that because we are trauma centered, because we see this type of injuries almost every other day, because we see gunshot wounds, we see penetrating trauma, and because of our experience treating these patients, we did outstanding job, and I'm glad that Maddy and her parents are here at this table to celebrate her successful recovery.
My name is David Wilford. I'm Maddy's dad. I am very grateful to be sitting here next to my daughter, alive and well today. And there's a lot of people to thank for Maddy's life, and 4 of them are in the back of this room right there. These guys from the Coral Springs Police Department and the Broward County Sheriff's Department for pulling her out of that school and saving her life. The people at Broward North again saved her life when she came in here. Sorry, there's a lot of emotions going on, and it's just, it's hard for me to feel anything but gratitude and thanks for the miracle that's happened with her and the way that she's been blessed, and the, you know, the outpouring from the community and all the prayers that people have given us. It's really it's really been quite an experience, and it really has been a real miracle. And I just have a lot of gratitude and thanks, and I have a lot of sympathy and empathy for her classmates and the other parents whose children were injured and whose children didn't make it. And I'm just grateful to be sitting here next to my daughter. Thanks.
Good morning. I am Missy Cantrell Wilford. I'm Madeline's mother. I too am very grateful to be sitting here today. I'm also John's mom and Jacob's mom and Connor's mom. We have a large family. My heart is so full with gratitude for all those that have helped Madeline, but all the other victims. I see this as, yes, it is a tragedy, but I would like to try to find a way to find the positive in what has happened here in our community. What I feel very strongly about, first and foremost, is the power of prayer. We have had an outpouring from people that we don't know, people that now I consider to be our friends. I may not have met you, but your prayers were felt. Prayers aren't necessarily, you can't see them, but you can feel them. Positive thoughts and all the positive energy, the help that the first responders knew where to bring her to this facility where they had the doctors, Dr. Nietzsche Parenko and Dr. Merkel, all the staff everything from the beginning to the end was really divinely, I'm sorry, I'm trying not to get emotional here, but directed and guided. Those that have sent prayers and little notes and on Facebook, I can't believe she's smiling, I can't believe she's recovering. It's how you feel inside your mind as you're driving your will to want to get better, to overcome something negative like this in the community that's happened and turn it into something positive. I see that in Madeline. I could probably spend an hour talking about my daughter. I am a little biased. She's a fighter. She's a fighter, and she wants to heal and she wants to get better. But I feel that what's helped her the most, and my son as well, who's a freshman at Douglas, he has his own story to share, that it's been her friends, it's been her classmates, it's been those moments where she could feel normal, and that has helped her psychologically heal. I know that there's a lot of resources out in the community that for all the youth and the students that are going to be returning on Wednesday. As a mom, I just have to say to you, do not be afraid to reach out for help if you need it. If you need help, it's okay. It's okay to feel the way that you feel. I know that our son is experiencing a different feeling. Madeline is healing her wounds right now, but will be healing emotionally for a while, as we all will as a community. And we're grateful for the visit from a leader of our church who came and offered a blessing to her from the prayers, and also the president who came. And I have to thank all the Broward County Sheriff's Department. I'm telling you, they were here 24/7. We could not get on the floor. I mean, we were they were on her watch 8 hours. Sometimes I was afraid I wasn't going to get on the floor. Are they going to let me in? But they did. They were doing their job. And one of the highlights out of this tragedy, I know this may sound silly, but they gave us an escort home. And it wasn't just an escort. They said, we're going to have, a police, escort home. And I thought, one car. And then they show up, and there's 4 on the motorcade, 3 Tahoes. They blocked off the sawgrass. I mean, this was in action, and I've never experienced anything like it. And my, teenage son is in the back seat with me, and we're like, this is like chips, where all these people are flying by, and we're like, wow, so they really went above and beyond. And one last thing about Madeline, she knows who she is, and she knows where she wants to go and what she wants in life, and that strength and power is what helps you heal. It makes you want to get up. It makes you want to keep going. She's an inspiration to me, and all those that have reached out to us, and the doctors and staff, but mainly our friends and family that from people that I grew up with, went to college with, people that we don't know across the country, across the world. You have been an inspiration to me. And for those of the moms that I have not been able to visit their children passed, I love you. I'm here for you. Those that are left in the hospital, I will come and visit with you. We have had so many visitors. I just have to say, it helped her mentality. It helped her heal. Thank you to all. Thank you for your time for coming. And I'm thinking that Madeline might like to say a little something, so I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
I'm Maddy Wilford. And I'd just like to say that I'm so grateful to be here, and it wouldn't be possible without those officers and first responders and these amazing doctors, and especially all the love that everyone has sent. And I was sitting on my couch today just thinking about all the letters and gifts that everyone has given, and just like all the love that's been passed around. I definitely wouldn't be here without it, and I just want to send my appreciation, love out to all of you, and that, like my mom said, it's times like these when I know that we need to stick together, and I've seen a lot of like positive posts about what's been going on at the school, and I just love the fact that we're sticking together at this, and I'm just glad that I'm making a full recovery and everything's been going so smoothly. So that's all I have to say.
At this point, we're going to have the family, they will not sit in, they will just sort them out, and then we'll open it up to questions for the first responders and physicians. Thank you.
Thank you.
So any questions for first response or the physicians to get more information?
Yes, sir. That's what everybody calls them.
If you would, I mean, this seems just so very personal to you, and it's emotional. Can you kind of explain what's behind all that?
In reference to,
Just how personal and emotional this is to you.
well, I have to say that at the time, I wasn't impacted as I am right now, or the following day I was more impacted, if that makes any sense. Just we were all on auto mode. We were just working, and for me, for example, when I saw the way my brothers, some of my brothers, and the dispatchers were affected, it affected me also. I have to say that this is also my vocation. I got into this job to help people, so I guess when you really, when you're able to see it through, and it makes it that much better. If that answers your question, sir.
Lieutenant, when Maddy told you that she was just 17 years old, what was going through your mind?
Well, first of all, I was so happy that the AFPU scale worked. That's just a scale that we use to determine responsiveness when the patient is not fully responsive. And I go, wow. You're almost like struck, because she was semi-conscious, like the doc was saying that when she got here, she was responding. And with us, it was the same. So when we were able to elicit a painful response, and she told us she was 17, that made the job easier for us, because this hospital takes 17-year-olds. So.
How many times was she shot?
At least 3 times.
At least 3. And how long of a period was it between the 3 surgeries that she had?
Within. Sorry. 3 surgeries, they all been done within 40-hour period.
And where can you say the gunshot, it was her chest or?
It was her right upper extremity, right chest, and right abdomen.
The decision was made to bring her here. If she had been brought to Broward General, which is much further away, were her injuries that she made?
Well, she kept on bleeding, so the training that we do with our EMS personnel is to grab and run to the nearest trauma facility. That's what we teach them, and that's what they did.
Did that save her life, I think?
Yes, of course.
How did her gunshot wound compare? How did her gunshot wound compare to gunshot wounds you've seen?
Smaller caliber?
Yeah.
So there is definitely a blast injury associated with bigger caliber. There's also cavitation effect that we see with bullets going through the soft tissue and vital organs.
What does that mean?
When the bullet travels through the soft tissue, it causes certain waves, shock waves, that destroy tissue adjacent to the bullet tract. So as a result, you see more tissue damage, soft tissue damage, also organ damage.
Does she still have fragments or bullets inside?
Yes.
Doctor, how many bullets did she hit?
At least 3.
Doctor, how lucky is she to be alive?
She's very lucky. Very, very lucky. Because we're talking about large caliber bullets penetrating through the chest and the abdomen. So those are significant injuries.
What kind of follow-up care does she need? Does she need additional therapy, rehab, surgery?
Not enough. Her chest and abdomen completely healed, but her right upper extremity has 2 tendon damage. So those tendons need to heal in about 4 to 6 weeks before she starts occupational therapy. Long.
Did you think so long-term, would you be able to play basketball again?
Well, you got to see how much she does with occupational therapy for the next 6 weeks or so, but I assume so she'll be fine.
Have any of you ever seen combat wounds? And if you have, how does this compare to what you've seen from combat battlefields?
Not in my experience. I'm a civil trauma surgeon. Never been involved in military, but again, we mainly deal with the small caliber bullets, so this is definitely different.
As you looked to safer, were there any complications or a point at which you thought maybe?
Really just an incredible account here from some of the medical staff who were on hand treating some of those patients and students at the shooting on Valentine's Day. It's really amazing to hear from Madeline and her family, her parents, so well spoken and talking about the event with such poise and grace, and somehow Madeline herself offering a few words as well about her status and of course her gratitude for being there. So these doctors, like I mentioned, this happened this morning, so they go on to kind of talk a little more detail about the status of some of the shooting victims there. But I want to flash us over quickly to a couple other things that are happening live before we close it up here, guys. Right now, this gun violence newser is happening on Capitol Hill. You can see this is in DC. Here we can break up the sound for a little bit, but also want to flash you down to Austin, Texas, where there is a slightly breaking situation. They're saying there's an incident. You can see some police cars outside of a DoubleTree hotel there, and from what I've seen right now on Twitter from Austin police, they've been tweeting about this for the past 4 minutes. There is an incident. What they're saying is the 300 block of West 15th Street in Austin, Texas, and they're saying a suspect is in custody. But all they're saying is that there is an incident. We don't have much more information than that. Like I said, we just got an alert on our box that this is something going on in Austin, Texas. So if something does blow up from this, I'm sure we'll be streaming it on our Facebook page, and we'll come back up on YouTube to show you. But I believe, according to the tweets, Austin police, there is a suspect in custody from some sort of incident down there. It doesn't seem like too much urgency or sort of chaos in this particular video. So we'll take you back and finish as we started, guys, with this look inside the Billy Graham library, where Billy Graham's body is laying right now in remembrance. Visitors are coming by to see him. This is in Charlotte, North Carolina. Later on this week, after Tuesday, his body will be brought to the United States Capitol Rotunda, where he will lie in honor here in DC. So definitely a special local angle for the evangelist who passed away last week. So we'll close out with this scene. Looks like we have a steady camera on this. And like I said, if anything does come up and anything is breaking for us that changes or is more urgent, we'll make sure that we post it on our social media platforms, which, by the way, you can follow on all platforms
in
for
regards
Fox
to
5
the shot in
DC,
Edge Live Channel 1.
on our website and Twitter,
We are getting word
Instagram,
that the suspect is in custody.
Facebook, and YouTube.
Again, this was an
We're
Edge
just
Live
getting
Channel
note right
1
now
in
that the
Austin,
suspect
Texas.
is in
There was an
custody
incident
in
at the
Austin,
Capitol.
Texas, like I mentioned.
The suspect
So
is in
I believe
custody.
that is less of an urgent scene. We'll have to wrap up what happened there in an article, so we'll do that for you guys to summarize what's going on. But we'll leave you with this live shot, like I said, inside the Billy Graham Library. And we'll see you guys tomorrow again for another stream. Thanks for joining us today. You can come back onto our YouTube channel tomorrow around 11:30, and we'll be up with more live and breaking news from our newsroom. Thanks for joining, guys.